Welcome all of you to the session, and we are talking about Hora today, and we're talking about Hora or Kal Hora from the perspective of a layman. We are trying to understand how we can use this as a concept, which is mathematically speaking one of the easiest concepts in astrology, and speaking in terms of utility, one of the most important concepts. So this is something that is not just used from an astrologer's perspective. This is not just a tool where you require a very in-depth understanding of astrology before you are able to use it. It's something that you can use on the daily basis, and it is something that will give you significant results. So this is one of the most important tools in astrology. It's something that I definitely use on a daily basis, something that I recommend everyone, including people who have been my students, including people who are my clients, and almost any time that someone comes to me with a question, I always recommend them using this as a tool for their daily basis, because it can help you take care of those trivial things, those minor things, or even some of the important considerations of your day-to-day life that otherwise you will have to every time book a consultation for with an astrologer, or maybe you are not able to find an astrologer or someone to advise you when that situation presents itself, right? So this is really something that is quite useful on the daily basis, and quite a remarkable tool at that. So let us get started with the discussion for Hora. Let me just first walk you through what is it that we are going to talk about and how we have arranged the session for today. It is going to span approximately an hour and a half. It could be anywhere between 75 minutes to 90 minutes, or maybe a couple of minutes over. But we are going to talk about first the overview of Hora, what Hora is, and what do I mean by when I keep on saying Hora or Kal Hora as a tool. What Hora is, how it is calculated, what is its importance, what is its purpose, how is it that you are going to be able to find out what Hora is and how to look at the Hora. Then we are going to talk about, from your perspective, how you can use Hora to predict things for yourself, or how you can use Hora as a tool to keep astrology in mind on the daily basis, right? And just keep a check on what is happening in your day-to-day life and how you can make the most of it. Then we are going to talk about some use cases, just to give you examples of common life scenarios that you may encounter, so that you understand and you're clear on what is it that we are talking about and how it applies to your daily life. After this, it should be fairly simple for you to go ahead and understand what we are talking about, and just apply it on your daily basis for a lot of the activities of your daily life. I'll try to cover all the types of scenarios that I can think of, and in all of the scenarios, how and where Hora can be applicable. Then we are going to spend some time talking about Hora from the part of a predictive astrology, or for astrologers. I'm not going to cover very much in detail about the concepts of Hora. I will treat this with two things in my mind. First of all, if you understand astrology, you will be able to follow up without me going into a lot of details. If there is a problem with you following up, then we can have other sessions on astrology, and there are other videos out there and my content that you can have a look at. But we are not going to explore everything in astrology because of the time constraint. And second, while we are talking here, it is also for the other people not with a strong background in astrology to understand how Hora is something that you can discuss with your astrologer if you want to, or you can at least get an insight about how the Hora as a tool can be more beneficial to you when you're talking and consulting to your astrologer. Just get a couple of points from them, and that will add to whatever we are discussing here. And we're going to talk about some practical applications for astrologers as well. So that is the agenda for today. Let us get started with the calculation, with the definition, and then we are going to go into examples and usage. So when I say Hora, what I essentially mean, Hora is the Sanskrit word for hour. It's just that. It's nothing very complicated. It's not something too different or too unique from what you're hearing for the first time, or you may not have an idea about. What we call Hora in Sanskrit is what you call hour in English, right? That's how the word hour comes from. It comes from Hora, which basically, as you know, is a division of 60 minutes. So whenever we talk about astrology, most of the times when we talk about astrology, you would have heard things like sun sign, moon sign, ascendant sign, zodiac sign, where planets are placed, what time of the day it is, what tithi it is, what muhurat it is, and so on and so forth. One variable among them, and a very important variable, is simply the hour. Each hour being ruled by a certain planet, or each hour being ruled by a separate astrological entity. And just knowing the hour, you can have an idea of how the time right now is, or what is it that you can expect. So the Hora is nothing but the Sanskrit term for hour, with one important difference. Hora is not of 60 minutes. Hora is not of 60 minutes, right? You are used to thinking that an hour is equivalent to 60 minutes and each hour is a 60-minute period. That is not the case with Hora. When we talk about Hora, we are talking about 24 divisions of a day, right? But when we talk about the English day definition, we are talking about 24 equal hours. When we talk about the Vedic or the Sanskrit definition of a day, we are talking from sunrise to sunrise. And the duration between sunrise to sunrise is not an exact 24 hours. It changes. Sometimes and on a day-to-day basis, it's a minute more, it's a minute less, but the duration is not an exact 24 hours. And if you remember basic science that we have studied in schools, it's the duration of a day is not exactly 24 hours, right? It shrinks, it's slightly less, and that is the reason why the Hora is not a complete 24 hours and not an equal division. The other thing to keep in mind is that the Hora, the way we define with respect to the clock or with respect to the 24-hour day, is we have equal hours in the day and night. The way we define those in astrology, or the way we define those in Sanskrit, is different. We have a day span and we have a night span. So suppose we are talking about India, and suppose we are talking about the winters, and we are talking about a place where you have the sunrise happening 7 in the morning and sunset happening 5 p.m. in the evening. Now the day span is not of 12 hours. It happens to be of 10 hours. And the night span happens to be of 5 p.m. to the next 7 a.m. roughly. It happens to be of 14 hours. I'm sorry. It happens to be of 14 hours, right? Now, we divide these 10 hours of day span into 12 horas each, and we divide the night span of 14 hours into 12 horas. So 10 hours, divide those into 12 horas, you get a hora of 50 minutes. Divide the night span of 14 hours and you get a hora of 70 minutes. On those days where the sun rises exactly at 6 a.m. and sun will set at exactly 6 p.m., making the day span exactly 12 hours and the night span exactly 12 hours, you have a fairly simple idea that one hora will be of 1 hour each. So 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. is the first hora, 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. is the first hora of the day, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. is the second hora of the day, 8 to 9 is the third, and so on and so forth. But in this case, or in most of the cases, most of the days of the year, there will be some difference. If sunrise is happening at 7 a.m. in the morning and you have 50 minutes of the day hora, then 7 a.m. to 7:50 a.m. is the first hora. 7:50 a.m. to 8:40 a.m. is the second hora, and so on. You go with respect to the calculation of 12 hours until you arrive at 5 p.m. Then 5 p.m. is the sunset. So 5 p.m. to 6:10 p.m. a span of 70 minutes, is the first hora of the night. 7:10, 6:10 to 7:20 is the second hora of the night, and so on, right? So just to give you an idea of what the hora is when we are talking about the hora and the calculation of hora. Now, that is how you get the 24 hours or horas of a day, which are not all equivalent 60 minutes. They can be longer, they can be shorter, depending on whether it is summers and winters. The day horas are longer in summers when the daytime is longer. The night horas are longer in winters when the night duration is longer, or the duration between sunset to sunrise is longer. So the first step in using the hora is to have the horas with you, right? So now we will talk very briefly about the calculation, but if you want to have a reference, when I talk about an Android app, there are a couple of them. The two that I know of is, one is called Planetary Hours. The other one is called the Jyotish app. You can download them, set them to your location, and it'll tell you what hora is running at what time of the day for you. You can even get notifications or things like that. When we are talking about a PC, it's an app called Kronos XP. You can search it on the Google and you will be able to download it. So these are things that will tell you what hora of the day is running, and it starts when and ends when, and that's simply all you have to be concerned about. For those who are learning from an astrological point of view, that's the principle or the concept behind calculation of a hora, right? If you have an iOS, I do not have the name of an app, but you can search it on the Apple Store and you will get a similar app. I think the Planetary Hours or a similar app is there on the Android, on the Apple App Store also. So you can search it there and you will be able to find it. Okay, so these are the apps. Make sure that since this is talking about sunrise and sunset, once you download the app, set it to your current location. If you have set it to Delhi and then you move and travel to Mumbai, the horas that are showing in your app at the moment are wrong. You need to update the location, right? Most of these are configured with GPS, but still, make sure that your location is up to date and it tells you what hora of the day is going on, right? Now, a couple of points from the astrological perspective. When we are looking at the horoscope, we talk mostly about the ascendant sign or the moon sign. Primarily, these are the two in Vedic astrology or in Indian astrology that tell you about what is going on with your horoscope and what is going on with how your planets are and how everything is. And the concept is the core concept of astrology is there are all of these different planets and there are these zodiac signs and everything, and they are located far, far, far away from Earth. Your life is determined by you are on the planet Earth, and what happens here matters the most. So that is why the horoscope is cast from either the ascendant, which is something determined by the movement of the Earth, or moon, which is the closest nearest entity to the Earth, right? In that, what happens is the hora becomes a much more authentic factor because the hora is also determined by the Earth and is one of the fastest moving factors. In the Panchang, which is something you usually refer to for muhurats, the hora is the strongest of all of the Panchang factors. You may have heard about Tithi, you may have heard about Nakshatra, you may have heard about Var, you may have heard about what weekday it is, and all of the other considerations of muhurat. The hora becomes the strongest of all of the Panchang factors. So even in situations where you do not have a clearly defined muhurat or a clearly calculated muhurat for all of your activities, say marriage, say getting a new job, say going for an interview or anything like that, if you do not have the luxury of getting a muhurat, or you do not have a muhurat identified, if this one simple thing that you take care of, the hora, then you are set with at least 70% of the muhurat, right? Now, it is a tool. It is a tool that can be used personally also for just your day-to-day considerations, and it's a tool that's a complete predictive package also that professional astrologers can use for their analysis, right? So we will go ahead and discuss about that. Just a brief on calculating the hora, just in case you want to verify that your app is calculating correct. Find the day span or the night span, just I showed you. If sunrise is 7 a.m., sunset is 5 p.m., the day span is 10 hours, and the night span becomes 14 hours. Divide that by 12, and that's the hora, that's the span of one hora. So your app should show you that span, or reasonably close to that span, right? And if it does, then the calculation of the app and how you set the location and everything is correct. So that's the thing. And similarly, add the day span, add the day hora span to the sunrise time, add the night hora span to the sunset time, and just it gives you the calculation. And anyways, you can refer all of these apps as long as you ensure that your location is up to date. Now, just a bit about what this hora is, right? And what are these 12 horas, and what are these 24 hours of the day? So quite simply, the horas or the hours are defined for one planet each. So you will have a hora for sun, you will have an hora for moon, you will have a hora for Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn, all of the 7 planets. The 2 other planets, Rahu and Ketu, are not considered in hora. So there are only 7 horas for these 7 distinct planets, right? And the order of the hora is this: the slowest to the fastest. And this is something that all of you would know and agree with. Saturn is the slowest moving of the planets because it's the furthest away from sun. Jupiter is the next slowest, Mars is the next, Sun is the next, Venus, Mercury, and Moon is the fastest moving of the planets. Moon changes its position in the zodiac every 2.5 days. Sun stays in one sign of the zodiac for 1 month, and so on. That's the order, right? So from the slowest to the fastest moving planet, you have the horas. For example, if right now is the hora of sun that's going on, and this hora is of, let's say, 1 hour. Let's say that this is one of the days where you have an equal 12-hour sunrise to sunset and 12-hour sunset to sunrise. So 1 hora of the day, right? And let's say that right now from 7 p.m. from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. is the hora of sun. Then 8 to 9 will be Venus, 9 to 10 will be Mercury, 10 to 11 will be Moon, 11 to 12 will be Saturn, and so on. So this is the hora, and this is fairly simple to keep in mind, fairly simple to recall. So even if you know that an hour back it was the hora of sun going on, and there is something that happens, something that for which you need to refer to what hora it is, you can just get an idea that it's probably Venus that's running, since 1 hour back it was sun, right? This is simply the order of the horas from the slowest moving of the planets to the fastest moving of the planets. There are these 7 planets, and there are these 7 horas that repeat throughout the day, right? And then how do you say, or how do you understand what hora it is going on the day, or any time of the day? So the thing is, you have these 7 weekdays: Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, right? Which are ruled, or which are named after the 7 planets that are ruled by them. So sun is Sunday, moon is Monday, Mars is Tuesday, Mercury is Wednesday, Jupiter is Thursday, Venus is Friday, and Saturn is Saturday, right? This is how you get your 7 weekdays. But actually, the way you get your 7 weekdays is each hour is ruled by one of these 7 planets. And if the sunrise of the day happens in the hora of sun, that day will be called Sunday. If sunrise for the day happens to coincide when the Hora of moon is starting, we call that day as Monday, or it's the day of the moon. If the sunrise is happening in the Hora of Mars, we call that day as Tuesday. And that is how, from the Horas, the weekdays have gotten their names, right? It's Hora, that's the primal concept from which we have these 7 weekdays that are called Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, because they begin with the Hora of that day. The sunrise happens in the Hora of that planet, and hence that those weekdays are called the are given these names, and they are 7 in number, and they are calculated. They are in that particular order, right? So how you can use this is, you can use it the other way around. Today we fairly clearly know whether it is Sunday or Monday or Tuesday. For example, today is Friday. That tells me that at the time of sunrise, the first hora or the first hour was ruled by Venus. The second was ruled by Mercury. The third was ruled by Moon. The fourth by Saturn. Fifth by Jupiter. Sixth by Mars, and so on. Right? So you can use it the other way around, but then you will have the horas in mind. And that's also something that helps you keep the calculation in mind. So a fairly simple calculation, a fairly simple way of keeping track of horas. You identify what day it is. The first hora of the day is the hora of that planet. On Sunday, the first hora of sunrise is the hora of sun. On Monday, the first hora is the hora of moon. On Tuesday, the first hora is the hora of Mars, so on. The order from there is fairly simple, that I have already mentioned in the order of speed on this side, right? And that gives you the tool to determine which hora is running at what time of the day very easily. This is the only calculation part and only counting part that you need to keep in mind. This is the order, and these are the first horas of the day, right? And that takes care of everything that has to do with the calculation. Now we'll directly jump onto how you can use the hora to understand how the day is, or when to do what, or which time, or which hora is good for what type of activity, and what type of results you can expect, right? So let's move on now. Now, when talking about how to use horas to determine the result, then we have a couple of concepts, just simple ones, right? All events that happen in a hora are ruled by the hora. For example, if you meet a person, how the person is, what are the good and bad qualities of the person, how is the behavior of the person, can simply be identified by understanding what was the hora in which you met the person. Similarly, if you get a letter for an interview, or an acceptance for an interview, or someone comes to you, or someone sets up a meeting with you in a particular hora, how that meeting is going to go, how that interview is going to go, how that application process is going to go, how that event is going to go, can all be determined by knowing what hora is going on, or what hora was going on at that moment or at that time, right? And just knowing what the planet is, what the hora is, and what you can expect from that planet or that hora, you are simply able to tell all of these things. For an astrologer's perspective, and for all those who are interested in astrology in this group that we have today, the Hora Lord will be considered equivalent to the Lagna or the ascendant. It can be the single point or factor that you can use to analyze the entire horoscope, to have a look at the entire horoscope, and just to analyze everything there with a person. The hora can also be used similarly as the equivalence of the ascendant, or for any calculation, any determination in a prashna chart, in a muhurat chart, in the mundane chart, in any types of charts or analysis that we have, right? Now, talking with respect to its importance or its value, it is one of the most important factors. It may look very simple with respect to how its calculation is there. It may look like a very static factor, but it is something that impacts on a very strong basis because it's a factor that changes very fast. It's something that defines each hour of the day uniquely, right? When we are looking at the good days or the bad days, when we are looking about whether today is auspicious for marriage or tomorrow is auspicious for marriage, we are talking about the entire day. The entire day, the entire month, the entire year can never be completely good or completely positive for any events. But the more fine-tuned you are, the more accurate your prediction or your analysis is, and hence Hora becomes an important factor. It's a simple factor, and yet it's a factor that you are keeping track of every hour of the day, right? Then with respect to the muhurat basically means determining when it is auspicious to do an activity. So when you're talking about your day-to-day events, applying for a job, applying for an admission, going out to meet someone, going out even for shopping, all of these are things or activities initiated at a particular time. There can be a good and an optimized muhurat for every single thing. Going to the doctor is something that you can have a very good muhurat for. Going shopping is also something that you can have a good muhurat for, depending on whether you want to save your money, whether you want to buy something that really satisfies you or that really appeals to you, and so on and so forth. There can be a lot of reasons for why you choose a muhurat, and there can be a lot of different types of muhurat. When getting married, there can be muhurats there can be a muhurat that increases the intimacy and the trust and mutual love between partners. There can be muhurats that are positive for the birth of children, and so on and so forth, right? Everything can be up to 60 to 70% controlled by this one factor that you can very easily keep track of on the day-to-day basis. So that is the theoretical part. That is the overall understanding of the muhurat, or what you can do from the muhurat. The overall understanding of Hora and what you can do from Hora. Now let us talk about how you can use it in your day-to-day basis and just what to keep in mind. So I have shown you what the Horas are. I have shown you what Hora of the day can be, how you can know which Hora of the day is running. Now let us talk about the characteristics of each of the planets and what they represent, right? So the 7 horas, so we'll be talking about all 7 of them one at a time, and what do each of them stand for, how you can use each of them. So the first one is Sun. Sun is in the planetary kingdom. Sun stands for the king. In terms of relationships and in terms of just the overall representation of a normal man's life, Sun stands for authority and the elders of your family, right? So in the planetary kingdom, in the planetary mythology, Sun stands for king. In with respect to aspects of your day-to-day life, it stands for any figure of authority. It stands for your elders, your seniors, your father, your bosses, your supervisors, all of those. So it even stands for the government, the government under whose ruling you are living. That government is also indicated by Sun. So everything about government, authority, seniority, respect, recognition, religion, elders, your ancestors, anything about discipline, anything about the pecking order or the hierarchy, anything about rules and regulations and law, anything about your career prospects, things that give you recognition and growth and establish your authority, anything about fame that gives you dominance over someone else, anything about your reputation. All of these things are ruled and controlled by Sun, right? When we talk about Moon, it is quite simply the planet of mind and the planet of your heart. So any matter of your heart and any matter of your mind is ruled by Moon. And in terms of relations, in terms of things that are part of your life, it represents your mother. It represents the emotional comfort. It represents someone who nurtures you, and it represents that emotional attachment part of life. So it represents the mind, it represents your mother, it represents, because it represents your mind, it represents flow of thoughts, flow of emotions, and every single thing that can flow. Moon represents water, moon represents all types of fluids, moon represents anything that has the tendency to change. Hence, moon represents travel, moon represents change of location, moon represents any type of change, right? So matters of the heart, matters of love, matters of creativity, matters regarding your emotions, your mind, your thought process, your peace of mind, satisfaction, everything that has a mental has a mental outset, or anything that has a mental outlook is represented by moon, right? Then next we talk about Mars. Mars is the planet of physical strength. Mars is the planet of courage. Mars is this planet of physical dominance. And Mars has everything that has to do with control from a physical point of view, from a physical strength and dominance perspective. So Mars rules strength, courage, war, disputes. It also represents accidents, injuries, scars, sports, warfare, aggression, heat, fire, fitness, all of these things. Mars also indicates lust, because being more on the physical side, Mars is a planet that represents physical satisfaction or physical intimacy, physical desire, physical indulgence, and hence becomes the planet of lust, right? Mars also represents land and property. Mercury is the planet of intelligence. It's the planet of learning. So Mercury represents intelligence, communication, wit, humor, learning, memory. And on the negative side, it also represents confusion. So Mercury is a child. One aspect of the child, of being a child, is you're sharp, you're intelligent, you're attentive, you're receptive. You can easily be taught something. The other aspect of being a child is you are confused. You do not have a personality of your own. You do not have a standing of your own. You still have a lot to learn. You are immature. You are not someone in whom enough trust can be placed, right? So Mercury also represents untrustworthiness, immaturity, enmity, debt and loan. Debt and loan are significations of Mercury, which astrologers will know, because Mercury is the natural sixth house lord. For other people, you can keep this in mind, that debt and loan are also part of Mercury. Jupiter is the planet of luck, religion, traditional, and overall all sorts of goodness. Jupiter is the planet of wisdom, maturity, because he is considered to be the guru of the Dev, or he's considered to be the Dev Guru. So he's the planet of wisdom and maturity, but also religion, ritual, tradition, luck, and everything, anything and everything that is associated with positivity in life. Venus is the planet for art, creativity, intimacy, romance, women in general, beauty, charm, luxury, enjoyment, anything that has to do with the feminine side of life, the creativity, the intimacy, the romance, all of the things that traditionally have a feminine side to it, or have been traditionally identified as a feminine quality. It also represents fertility. It represents material possession. It represents everything that is good and of the highest order. Anything that is luxurious, anything that gives you happiness, anything that gives you bliss, all of those things are represented by Venus. All of those qualities are represented by Venus. Lastly, Saturn is the planet of delay, frustration, sickness. And Saturn in general is, in the planetary kingdom, Saturn is the servant. So Saturn represents efforts without results. Saturn is a planet who is bound to perform, bound to do, but in turn will never be able to grow, because there is a wall that blocks his growth, that blocks its growth. And Saturn, in terms of the qualities of life or the aspects of life, represents old age. Old age and sickness, where, and hence combining these two, you get its qualities of delay, frustration, sickness. It represents efforts but without results. It represents the effort part but not the result part. It represents slowness. It represents old age and vulnerability. It represents anything that is too old or too ancient or too old fashioned or anything like that. However, it represents stability. It represents maturity. It represents something that if it happens and when it happens will sustain for a very long time. But it also represents stagnation, all of the qualities of old age, more or less of the old age, right? And it represents spirituality. Now, these are the ideas about the seven planets, or the basic concepts about the seven planets to keep in your mind. Basis this, how is it that the traits will be positive or negative? So how can this be utilized in your day-to-day life, or how does it matter with respect to our concept of Hora? So the Hora of sun, or the influence of sun in any astrological concept, is positive whenever we are talking about image, status, recognition, authority. For example, you are going to apply for a job. You can do that in the Hora of sun. You are going to meet someone who is at a very senior position. You're going to meet your boss. You are going to go to meet your boss in order to put an appeal, or in order to put a request. You're going to a government office to get some of your work done. Anything that involves any of these significations of sun, or even if not of sun, anything where you want your image, status, and authority to be protected, all of those activities, they are favorable in the Hora of sun, right? When we are talking about any type of change or movement, for example, you have to go on a travel, you have to you are booking tickets for a flight, you're booking tickets for a train, or whenever we are talking about matters of the heart, whenever we are talking about any emotional connection or bond, in all of those things that matter to your mind, that matter in your heart, or that are important to you, or that are close to you, very close to you in your heart, in those cases, or whenever there is a change or a movement required, we look at the Hora of moon, right? Or the Hora of moon will give a positive result. Whenever we are talking about a situation where you want to assert your dominance, or any activity that has to do with physical fitness, for example, sports, Mars Hora is very good. It's one of the most positive horas for any sports related or fitness related activities and things like that. Whenever you want to assert your dominance, the Hora of Mars is very good. It's very positive. So, and not a very common example, but if you're going to go on a war, or if you're going to engage in battle, the time to initiate is in the Hora of Mars, right? So everything that has to do with aggression or dominance, these are things that happen in the Hora of Mars. Mercury, as you would know and expect, it's good for anything associated with learning and communication. Jupiter is Jupiter and Venus are two of the horas that are considered most auspicious of all seven of them. So they are overall good for any auspicious work or any positive activity that you're supposed to do. Saturn, it's good for self-improvement, it's good for introspection, it's good for meditation, it's good for spiritual practices. It's good to practice anything. It is something where you are putting in the efforts. If you are preparing for examination, Saturn Hora is good, but it's not a Hora that will give you a result. So it's not the Hora in which you should go and sit in an examination or go and appear for an interview, right? Because Saturn's tendency is to perform, work, struggle, and yet not get a result. So the Hora of Saturn is good for everything that has to do with practicing, that has to do with putting in efforts, that has to do with that work that goes in before getting a result. But Saturn has nothing to do with results, right? So Saturn's Hora is a Hora where it's effort oriented, you can say, where it's whenever you are in a situation where you want to put in efforts, it should be done in the Hora of Saturn, or the most positive Hora is Saturn. But whenever you are expecting a result, it should not be done in the Hora of Saturn, right? Now, these are the positives. Let's talk about the negatives. Sun has the tendency to delay results. Despite everything good, despite being one of the positive horas that you have among the 7, whatever you do in the Hora of Sun will give its result, will lead to something good, but it will happen after a delay. It will not happen on time. There will be some delay, irrespective of how smooth everything is. But it will deliver you with the positive result. It will protect its positive, your image, your status, and all of those things we talked about. When talking about the Hora of Moon, it's absolutely not good to do anything in a troubled state of mind in the Hora of Moon, right? Anything that troubles your mind, or in any situation where your mind is very troubled, very unstable, and you are just full of negative thoughts, negativity, and stress and frustration, in those times the Hora of Moon becomes absolutely horrible, because it is the planet of mind. It's directly in sync with your mind. The more stable and positive your state of mind, the more stable and positive are the results that you get from the Hora of Moon. Mars, the negative side is it often leads to confrontations or accidents. Common examples: if you have to leave your house and you have to travel somewhere, and you live in the Hora of Mars, if you are reckless, you are going to get into an accident. Minor or major is a secondary thing. Someone may hit your car, there may be a dent in your car, or you may be in a very negative accident, in a very bad accident. That's a very separate matter. That is not what I'm saying is that you are going to get into a fatal accident or something. But it will lead to either accident or confrontation whenever it gets the chance. If you're meeting someone in the Hora of Mars, if there is a possibility for an argument or just difference and aggression to happen, it will lead to that, right? So Mars's Hora, for its thing and for land, property, for fitness, all of these things, it's very positive, but it will create the possibility of either confrontation or accidents if not paid enough attention. That's one major negative with the Hora of Mars. Mercury has the tendency to, similar to Sun, cause delays, and it also has the tendency to create confusions. So if you initiate something in the Hora of Mercury, for example, if you're applying for a job interview in the Hora of Mercury, there will be confusion until the day of result as to whether this is happening or not, whether you were selected or not, whether your interview went good or not, whether they're considering you or not. It will keep confusion at its peak. It will never let you settle. Apart from its positive results, even when it is giving positive results, even when it is giving favorable results, it's impossible that it does so without confusions and obstacles. And when I talk about obstacles, what I mean is, if you're applying for an interview in the Hora of Mercury, and then you review your application later on, it's possible that you realize you have filled something incorrect. It's possible that you realize that one of the documents you had to submit was missing, and then you have to do it again. So these are the tendencies of Mercury Hora. It creates some obstacles, it creates some delays. Even when giving its result, it will not leave its primary basic behavior, right? Talking about Jupiter, it's because it is all auspicious. It's auspicious for all of your activities except for negative activities. So for example, if there is a situation where you need to, how do I say? Okay, let's take very absurd examples. If there is a situation where you need to blackmail someone, don't do that in the Hora of Jupiter, right? It's going to land you in all sorts of troubles. If there is a situation where you have to do anything that is not completely positive, and common things are, if there is a situation where you need to push there is a situation or there's an interview where you need to push your name, but you push your name by some reference or some direct or indirect influence on the person who is deciding who gets to apply in the job or who gets selected in the job. Don't do such things in the Hora of Jupiter, right? Anything about influence, anything related to corruption, anything related to anything that is not completely positive and nice. Don't do such things in the Hora of Jupiter, because it lands you into trouble. It will definitely land you into trouble. When talking about the Hora of Venus, Venus is also positive and auspicious for all types of work, but not when aggression is required. If you want to dominate the other person, if you want to assert your influence, assert your dominance, don't start something in the Hora of Venus. For example, if you're meeting your subordinates, if you want to have a good relationship and a good chemistry with them, meet them in the Hora of Venus. But if you want them to be under your control and under your influence and listen to every word that you say, don't do so in the Hora of Venus. Right now, this is something that can have a lot of implications. I'm not saying that the Venus Hora is bad in situations of hierarchy. What I'm saying is, there will be understanding, but there will never be total complete authority. So if dominance is what you require, the Hora of Venus, if aggression is what you require, if force is what you require, it should not be done in the Hora of Venus. Anything of that sort. Right? Lastly, Saturn, it's not positive to initiate anything at all. Any initiation, any beginnings in Saturn will always end up in delays. Saturn is good for practice. Saturn is good for mock attempts. Saturn is good to prepare yourself, but Saturn is not good to initiate your journey towards the result. Right? Now, last point with respect to the Hora, or with respect to the traits of the Horas, is Sun, Moon, Jupiter, and Venus are result-oriented Horas. Their positive side is that ultimately they are going to give you the result. They are going to work favorably for you. Right? Mars, Mercury, Saturn, they are not result-oriented, they're effort-oriented. They will teach you, they'll make you learn, they will make you grow in the process, but there is no guarantee of the final result. So whenever we look for something where a situation where we want the result, in general, we tend to avoid Mars, Mercury, and Saturn. For example, if you're going to the gym to increase your physical health and fitness, the Hora of Mars is good. If you're enrolling into the bodybuilding competition to win, the Hora of Mars is not good. If you are if you are studying, or if you are beginning to study or learn a subject, the Hora of Mercury is good. If you are appearing for the final examination, the Hora of Mercury is not good. If you are putting in efforts to improve yourself or to learn something, or anything like that, or anything of that matter, the Hora of Saturn is good. If you want to achieve the final result, the Hora of Saturn is not good. Right? So this is now the general idea about how the 7 Horas are, or and what type of result, what qualities you can expect from them. Now let us go ahead and try to have a look at what are the different types of usage you can have in your daily life. So I have divided this into 4 pieces or 4 parts altogether. First is initiation. Whenever you're beginning something, it will have the qualities of the Hora, and you can use, or you can understand from the Hora which Hora to begin something in to get the most of the positive results. This is kind of on the lines that we have been talking about. Let's go back and refer to those again. So for example, and let's talk about everything in life, one after the other. Just a quick example, just to give you clarity. Right? If we are talking about something like education, and you are applying for an admission into a college, or admission into a program, or filling up the form for an examination, right? Now, in general, the Hora of Sun, the Hora of Moon, the Hora of Jupiter and Venus will be good for you. Saturn will delay the admission process, as you can expect. Mercury will create some ifs and buts with the admission process. Maybe your form is not complete. Maybe your admission gets on hold because of some reason or the other. It will create some delays. It may give you the admission in the end. It will create some delays. It will create some challenges. Mars is good as far as the result is concerned, or as far as the final result is concerned, but Mars will also create the possibility of some obstacles or confrontation. Maybe when you go to fill up your examination form, someone there is not in a very good mood and you end up engaging in an argument, as it usually happens in the Hora of Mars, right? Or because of some reason or the other, there is a conflict that needs to be resolved first before you can proceed with the application. One example of how the Horas can give you results basis their qualities. If you're going for an interview, the Hora of Sun is good, you will make a good impression. The Hora of Moon is good, things will happen very smoothly without any major difficulties or challenge. If you are appearing for an interview in the Hora of Mars, it's certainly going to be there that the situation ends in a confrontation. You may make a good impression, you may argue and debate with the with the interviewer and then ultimately make a good impression, but there will be a confrontation. Mercury similarly is good for interviews because Mercury is good for education and communication and exchange of ideas. So there Mercury will facilitate. Jupiter and Venus are good. Saturn will create delays with your interview process. It may not lead to you having the best first impression, right? Second example. Third example, something very basic and something very trivial. You have to go out for shopping. Go out in the Hora of Moon, you will find what you want or what you like, or what appeals to you. Go in the Hora of Venus, you will find something extraordinary, something extravagant, something quite luxurious, something quite charming, and you may return with that. Usually in the Hora of Mercury, you may have to go back and return what you have bought at least once, or exchange what you have bought at least once, or you may not be very happy or satisfied with it. In the Hora of Saturn, it will not be very productive for you. Jupiter, Mars, Sun, they are kind of neutral with respect to this. They have no major positives or negatives here, but these are what most align to the purpose of shopping, right? You want something that you like or something that appeals to you. Hence, Moon and Venus. Something like, let's say, something about something with respect to your relationship. For example, you are going on a date, or you are going to meet someone for the first time, and you want a good, happy, positive, loving relationship with them. Then again, the Hora of Moon, the Hora of Venus, the Hora of Jupiter, things that are lucky for you, things that are in general lucky. Even the Hora of Sun, because it protects your image, it helps you make a good impression, right? When you are going to the gym for the first time, or when you start your daily workout or daily routine, the Hora of Mars. Even the Hora of Saturn. When you're studying for a competitive exam, the Hora of Mercury, right? So depending on what the situation is, what is it that you are initiating, and what is it that you are doing, what activity you are pursuing, depending on their areas and their respective domains, the Horas of some planet become positive, some become neutral, and some become negative. That is one, which is initiation. You can choose which Hora aligns the most with the activity that you are just trying to do, and then initiate that, right? The second one is analysis. when you get an information or when something has happened. And now the Hora, it's just the reverse calculation. Now it can help you ascertain what is going on. For example, you get an opportunity for an interview in the Hora of Sun. It's something associated with your image, status, and recognition. It's something positive. You will perform well. It's a job that you are likely to get. It's a job that's likely to be positive for you, right? If you travel and you travel in the Hora of Moon, Moon represents anything that is changing or any type of motion. So for example, if you have to go out of your house or you have to travel and it happens to be in the Hora of Moon, that means you are going to reach your destiny before the planned time. So if you think that it's going to take an hour, if you leave your house and it's a 1 hour drive, if you leave in the Hora of Moon, it'll take a bit less than 1 hour. You will reach before time, right? A common indication of the Hora of Moon. If for example, let's see what else we can think of. If you lend out money to someone in the Hora of Moon, it represents change. The money will come back sooner than you expect. If you borrow money from someone in the Hora of Moon, you will have to pay back sooner than you expect. Right? Moon always amplifies or quickens or hastens whatever it is that you're doing. It represents change. It represents flow and movement, right? So if any of these things happen in the Hora of Moon, then the speed increases with respect to that, or the how soon you can expect the result increases. Any news that you get in the Hora of Moon, for example, you're called for an interview or you apply for an interview, you apply for an admission, it is going to be complete sooner than what you expect. So if you apply for a job interview in the Hora of Moon, the expected duration for them to get back for everything to complete is 1 month. It will be completed within 20-25 days. Whatever happens in the Hora of Moon happens fast. The Hora of Mars. Anything that happens in the Hora of Mars, now there are a couple of things with respect to the Hora of Mars, because it can go up a few different ways. So for example, any information or anything that you have in the Hora of Mars, or anything that is initiated in the Hora of Mars, there is a possibility of aggression or confrontation. But there is also the indication of dominance, of you dominating your way, right? That is how it happens with the Hora of Mars. There will be some obstacle, some delay, there will be some break, there will be some confrontation, and maybe arguments or aggression with respect to it, but that's how it is. So for example, let's say okay, let's come back to that example at a later point of time. That will make more sense. Mercury. Any information that comes in the Hora of Mercury is not completely reliable and not to be taken at the face value. For example, if you get a call for an interview in the Hora of Mercury, if you receive a news from someone in the Hora of Mercury, it's still not fully known. It's not as is. For example, you are called you get a call for an interview in the Hora of Mercury, they call you tomorrow. There is going to be some change in the timing, or there is going to be some change in the terms and conditions from what they have said there will be some confusion, something that is not fairly clear, or something that eventually changes, because Mercury has a tendency for delays, confusions, and obstacles. So anything that happens in the Hora of Mercury, not completely reliable. A quick point, right? But anything that happens in the Hora of Mercury, as far as it's for learning, as far as it's for communication and all, it's very positive. Next, Jupiter. Anything overall that happens in the Hora of Jupiter is fairly positive. It's something that can be trusted, it can be relied on, that's stable, and that is positive for the long term. Similarly, for the Hora of Venus, anything happening in the Hora of Saturn is one, going to go towards delays and difficulties, and second, it can manifest in something of a negative sort. For example, getting a call for an interview in the Hora of Saturn, first of all, there will be delays, and second, it may not be as per your expectation. A very common example, you are putting money in stocks, or you're putting money in shares, or you're buying something, or if you're investing in something, do it in the Hora of Saturn. It's an asset that you will hold for a very long time. If you plan on investing for a month, it can become 6 months if you invest in the Hora of Saturn, and yet it will give you lesser returns than your anticipation. If you give out a loan to someone in the Hora of Saturn, it's not coming back anytime soon. If you take a loan in the Hora of Saturn, you're not going to be able to pay that anytime soon. If you get your blood test results in the Hora of Saturn, or you get your blood test done in the Hora of Saturn, and you are sick and you want to know what your actual disease or your actual diagnosis is, if it's the Hora of Saturn, it's going to give you a diagnosis that stays with you for a long term. Right? So everything with delay, with stability, meaning anything that is long term, and anything that prolongs your suffering is indicated in the Hora of Saturn. So these are the results, or these are the indication with respect to analysis. When you are not initiating something, but something just happens, and then you come to know that this thing happened in the Hora of Saturn, or this information came in the Hora of Moon, then what does that imply? Right? That's the second part of the analysis. The third part is people, when you're meeting someone. So whenever you meet someone for the first time, whenever you get to know the person for the first time, whenever you encounter the person first time, the Hora in which you encounter them, or the Hora in which you meet them, or they you have an interaction with them, is the Hora that will define their personality. For example, in the Hora of Sun, if you meet someone who is a respectable, respected figure with a good name, with a good reputation, with nothing that is there, someone who is a little mature, someone who's a bit of a disciplinarian, and a personality just overall around the lines of these significations. When you meet someone in the Hora of Moon, someone you connect to emotionally, someone you have a strong emotional connection with, someone who you have a soft corner for in your heart, or someone who you share a very good relationship, very caring type of a relationship, is someone who you meet in the Hora of Moon. Someone who is emotional by nature, right? Someone who is more artistic or creative by nature. In the Hora of Mars, if you meet someone, they are aggressive. They are someone with a tendency to get into arguments. They are someone who likes to dominate. They are someone who are physically fit and physically quite healthy and quite well built and well structured. They are someone, if you meet them in the Hora of Mars, they are someone who may have a couple of scars, or have had previous injuries or accidents, or physical obstructions in life. In the Hora of Mercury, if you meet someone, they are intelligent, they're communicative, they have a very strong sense of communication. They're quite good communicators, good speakers. They're people who talk a lot, who say a lot, who are witty, who are humorous, who interact and engage in a lot of communication, right? Just the overall quality. Also, if you meet someone in the Hora of Mercury, they are not completely reliable, because the result of Mercury, it's not someone you can trust blindly. Jupiter. Jupiter is the planet. If you meet someone in the Hora of Jupiter, they are more traditionalists. They are simple. They're calm, and they are quite happy-go-lucky, right? But still, those who conform to religious values or religious tendencies. Someone who's wise or mature. All of these are indications in the Hora of Jupiter. Venus, someone who's creative, someone who's charming, someone who has a way of impressing others, or someone who just by the strength of their personality or by the way of their communication, they're able to impress someone, or they're able to create a lasting impression. Someone who's feminine or has feminine traits, meaning the common feminine traits, or when I say feminine, I'm meaning in the general stereotypical way, not being someone with those actual physical feminine qualities, things that you usually associate with female, because there is a certain artistic side to the female figure, or to the female gender. Those stereotypical feminine characteristics of art, of beauty, of charm, of softness, of maybe being a good singer, being someone who's creative, all of those things will be there in that person, right? So that is the quality of someone you meet in the Hora of Venus. Also, if you meet someone in the Hora of Venus, in the Hora of Sun, if you meet someone, they're proud. In the Hora of Mars, they're arrogant. In the Hora of Moon, they are understanding. In the Hora of Mercury, they are communicative. In the Hora of Jupiter, they are intellectual. In the Hora of Venus, they are too full of themselves, or too happy with themselves, or too narcissistic in the manner of speaking. Saturn, too humble. In the Hora of Saturn, if you meet someone, they are humble, they are down to earth, they are simple, they are very practical. And also, if you meet someone in the Hora of Saturn, they are someone from whom nothing will stand out. For example, with all of the other planets, there'll be something that stands out. Saturn, you will meet someone who is quite mature, quite sincere, quite hardworking, quite simple, but someone from whom, or in whose personality, nothing stands out or nothing jumps to you, which is how you can define them as humble, simple, and sincere. Right? So couple of qualities of people you meet in the individual horas, and that tells you what type of a person they are, and what type of a relationship you can have with them, or what type of likes and dislikes the person has, how does the person behave, and all of these things. Right? That is with respect to the third quality of people. And now the fourth quality that I have added, or the fourth usage that you have to keep in mind in your daily life, is observation. Now, these horas and all of the results that I'm trying to tell you are generalized results. Depending on your horoscope, this can get modified. For example, there can be people for whom the Hora of Saturn is quite good and productive. They are people for whom nothing in their life happens without delays. They have to apply twice or thrice before they get any result. They are people who get everything after some delays, and nothing really goes quite smoothly in their life, but yet they accomplish growth and accomplish all sorts of results, and most of the things in their life happen in the Hora of Saturn. That can be a case. Saturn can be good for you. It will not leave its quality. It will not leave its quality of delay, frustration, sickness, effort, slowness, and it will not leave any single of these qualities. But yet, depending on your horoscope, depending on how planets are for you, Saturn may ultimately be good in that it gives you the final result. After all of its obstacles and challenges, it gives you the final result. And depending on your horoscope, Jupiter may be negative for you. Everything happens smoothly, everything happens positively. In the end, the result does not materialize. So that's a case. That is where the personal part of it comes, or the personal the influence of the individual horoscope or the individual person's life comes on the result of this hora, which is why the fourth aspect of using hora is observation. Meaning, whenever something happens in your life, start keeping a track of, if it happened in sun, did it happen positive or negative? If it happened in the Hora of Moon, was it positive for me or negative for me? If it happened in the Hora of Mars, was it positive for me or negative for me? With some observation. To begin with, these standards are what you can start. But for example, if you are doing something, you initiate in the Hora of Jupiter, Jupiter is going to give its result. Jupiter is going to make it smoother for you to gain results. But if you in the end realize that Jupiter did not give you favorable results, or previously in life, whenever you have done something in the Hora of Jupiter, it has not materialized as smoothly, then that is because it's coming from here. So based on your observation, remove Jupiter from your positive Hora list the next time you're doing something. Similarly, the other case is also true. For example, something in your life happens in the Hora of Mars and it happens to go quite favorably without any major obstacles or challenges. Add Mars to the list of positive Horas for you, right? So the last one is with this theoretical understanding, because we are not talking from a purely astrological perspective where we are analyzing everything about your horoscope. So among the 7 planets, some, depending on your horoscope, some will be good, some will be bad, some will be positive, some will be negative for you. And that presence in your horoscope, or that influence in your horoscope, may turn the planet completely positive or completely negative for you, which an astrologer will be able to tell. But talking in terms of your personal life, or in terms of how you can use Hora and keep a track of Hora for those planets, and in those situations also keep an eye out for when something happens in your life, right? And that becomes your 4th variable to just keep an observation. Is something happening in the Hora of Mercury positive or negative? Is it happening smoothly? Is it happening with delays? Is it happening with struggles? That is a result that is going to be consistent. You just have to observe and understand it once, right? You need to know astrology to know it for every person, and to be able to predict for every person. But just for your life, keeping a track of Horas for 1 week is good enough to tell which Horas are giving you positive result, which Horas are giving you negative result, right? And then just create your bucket of positives and negatives from there, and you can take it forward. Now, these are some of the important tasks, but the Hora really goes even beyond that. So for example, you're going to try out a new restaurant, right? And you're going on a dinner with someone. The Hora in which you go into the restaurant is what tells you what type of a food you will have. For example, Venus, quite a sumptuous meal. Moon, something quite good, right? The planet that is negative for you, or the planets that are bad for you, they will anyways give you negative results. Mars and Sun usually represent, Mars represents food that is very hot or very spicy. Sun usually represents something like a royal spread, or a royal choice of meal. Mercury represents something that has multiple tastes. So a spread with a lot of variety, a meal or a spread that has a lot of variety, that has all types of dishes and all types of tastes. Jupiter usually represents things on the sweeter side. Jupiter and Venus represent things on a sweeter side. Saturn represents something that's not, that you won't be very fond of, or that you won't appreciate very much, right? Another example of how you can use Hora. One other way is when you start your day. If you get up in the Hora of Mars, there, and it's an important day. I'm not saying do this on every single day, but for example, if today is you have to go for an interview, and if you wake up in the Hora of Mars, throughout the day and in the interview process, there is a chance of getting into confrontations. If based on your analysis, based on your observation over weeks and days and months, you feel Jupiter is the most positive Hora for you, for that day of the interview, wake up in the Hora of Jupiter. Things will go much more smoothly that day, right? So these are in total 4 principles that you have to keep in mind. First of all, when you are initiating something, the traits and how that task will complete, favorably or unfavorably, and what are the attributes of that task, will be determined by what Hora you have started that in. Here, it's important to know when you actually initiate the process. So when you are applying for an interview, when you are leaving your house to go for the interview, when You are starting your journey, leaving your house and going down to your car and then sitting in your car and starting that car. That is when your journey starts. When you are meeting someone for the first time, then the time in which you are meeting the person, right? So for example, common example and a common situation is, I need to leave my house at 8 p.m. and meet someone at 9 p.m. If I leave my house at 8 p.m., the Hora at 8 p.m. will tell me how my journey is going to be. The thing that is initiated at 8 p.m. is, I'm leaving my house and I'm going to meet someone and then come back. This trip or this travel or this journey is what 8 p.m. determines. I meet the person at 9 p.m. How the person is, how my interaction with the person is going to be, and how my equation with the person is going to be will be determined at what Hora was it at the 9 p.m. If that person asks me to sign a contract with them, a business contract with them, and I sign that business contract at 10 p.m., how that business is going to fare for me, whether I'm going to get profit from the business or not get profit from the business, that is going to be determined by the Hora at 10 p.m. Right? So whenever it is that you are doing something, that you are engaging in something, remember, it's the moment of beginning that matters. It's possible that you have a meeting that lasts 3 hours. You don't have to worry about all 3 horas. When you meet and when you initiate, that is the time and that is the situation where it's important to keep in mind that that is the Hora that matters, and that is the Hora that will tell you how your day or how that thing is going to be. Similarly for marriage, and similarly for like marriage, most of you or most people do get a muhurat or do ask for a muhurat or do things according to a muhurat. But things like proposing to someone, getting engaged, done in the Hora of Venus or Jupiter or Moon, or any one of these that is that is the most favorable for you, your married life or your engagement and relationship with the person is going to be positive, is going to go well. Proposing to someone, you can very easily take a look at the Hora and then see when you propose to a person, how is that relationship going to be, because that's the moment in which that relationship initiates, right? So just keep in mind that it's the initiation, at the time of the initiation, that you see what Hora is going on. And always it is done from your perspective. For example, if you are having a Skype interview, you are in Delhi, the other person is in Mumbai, you have to worry about what Hora it is in Delhi, not about what Hora it is in Mumbai. Right? So always keep in mind that it's for you that matters. If you get a news, for example, if someone is sick and they call you to inform that they have fallen sick and they have been diagnosed with they are sick and they have to go to the doctor and things like that. What Hora is going on for you? They may be calling from Mumbai, you are in Delhi, and or they may be in Delhi and you are in Mumbai. It matters what Hora did the news land in your ears, where you are, and that tells you what's going to happen. So for example, someone calls you and tells to say that they are sick, they're not feeling well, and they do so in the Hora of Saturn. You can understand that they're going to be sick more than they are expecting. If they say they're going to be fine in 1 day, it can take a couple of days. If they're saying they'll be fine in a couple of months, it can take more than that, right? So because of how Saturn gives its result, it's when you encounter something at your location that the Hora matters, not when someone else is encountering it or what is happening anywhere else. That is what it matters. Of course, if your friend got called for an interview and you want to know whether that interview or that job is something that they are going to get, you are analyzing for them, then you have to keep in mind that their Hora and when they got the news. If it's not related to you, if you're doing the analysis for someone else, then what happened to them is what matters. So This is, in a nutshell, the concept of Hora, or the idea of Hora, that's something fairly simple to keep track of on a day-to-day basis. Most of the apps that I've told you, the planetary hours and the Jyotish app, these will also give you a list of significations and tell you what the Hora is good for and bad for. So you can just understand from there that how to keep a track of it, or how to keep a track of it, or how to just follow this in your day-to-day life, and whatever are the things that you can use this for. Right now, couple of points from the astrologer's perspective, and really I'm not going to go into a lot of details because most of you should know these points, and this is not a complete astrology class. But Hora is something that can be used in the horoscope as an equivalent to the birth chart, right? So first of all, check the placement of the Hora lord, its dignities, what sign it is placed in, what house it is placed in. That tells you overall how the horoscope fares, and what is it that's and how the life of the person is going to be. For example, the Hora lord placed in the 8th house, there will be health related issues, difficulties in the life of the person, and some obstacles and challenges. Hora lord placed in the 1st house, the person is going to have quite a lot of growth in their life, right? Second is, the characteristic of the person is reflected in the Hora lord. Someone born in the Hora of Saturn, things in their life will happen after delays. The person is someone who's mature and someone who looks a bit older than their age, someone who has a Saturn like personality, right? So the characteristics are reflected in the Hora lord. Someone born in the Hora of Sun will have an air of authority about them. The Hora lord and its dignities decide the overall life pattern. If the Hora lord is in a bad position, if the Hora lord is combust, if the Hora lord is in a lot of affliction, in that case, the life is equivalently filled with obstacles, difficulties, and delays. Next point, and a very important point, is you have overall 5 important considerations in the horoscope: the ascendant lord, the moon, the sun, and the Hora lord. 5 factors. How many of these 5 are well placed in the horoscope or strong in the horoscope determines how powerful the overall horoscope is. If the ascendant is influenced by a benefic, without any malefic influence, with a strong planet placed there, if the ascendant lord is favorably placed in a kendra or a trine, moon and sun are very strongly placed without malefic influence, and the Hora lord is also favorably placed without any malefic influence, if all 5 of them are positive, it's quite a strong horoscope. 4 of them are positive, still a strong. 3, average. 2, and so on and so forth, right? And that is what tells you the overall extent and scale of growth that the person is going to encounter. Last point is, you can take the Hora lord as the 1st house and analyze the entire horoscope. Just like we calculate the horoscope from the ascendant, take wherever the Hora lord is placed as the 1st house. For example, let's say sun is your Hora lord, and sun is placed in the 10th house in Capricorn. Take Capricorn as your 1st house, Aquarius as your 2nd house, and analyze the horoscope. That is also something equivalent to your birth chart, and something that will give you the exact same analysis. Right? Similarly, the Hora can also be used in the Prashna chart. And there are a couple of important concepts with respect to the Prashna chart. The Hora lord is, again, following on the birth chart point, is equivalent to the Prashna Lagna. So if someone comes to you, asks a question in the Hora of Venus, and right now it's the Gemini ascendant and Venus is in Cancer, for example. You don't need to look at Gemini ascendant. You can just take Cancer as the ascendant where the Hora lord is placed and then analyze from there. Right? Second, dignities, association, and placement determine the result. So if the Hora lord Venus is combust, aspected by malefics in the influence of Rahu or Saturn, there are indications of something being negative. If the Hora lord is well placed, exalted, aspected by a benefic planet in a favorable position, then the result is going to turn favorably for the person. Third, the question that a person has, the prashna that they come with, must conform with the Hora lord. So if someone has a question of when am I going to get married, it could be the Hora of Venus, it could be the Hora of Moon, it could be the Hora of Jupiter, and in the Prashna chart, this Hora lord is going to be connected with one of the indicators of marriage. If they come to you with a question of when I'm going to get married in the Hora of Sun, that means in the Prashna chart, Sun is either influencing Venus or the 7th house, 7th lord, or in the horoscope of the person, Sun has a connection with the 7th house. The Hora lord must conform with the question. That is also how you validate whether the question that is being posed to you is correct or not. Or is the person just here to test you or just to have fun and not really asking a sincere question? The Hora Lord can be used for progression. Now, this is an interesting concept, right? And just for astrologers who or people who have some ideas about the concept of progression. For example, Venus is the Hora Lord. Venus is placed in, let's say, Libra with Rahu. And behind Venus in Leo, you have Sun. And ahead of Venus, behind Venus you have Sun, and ahead of Venus you have Saturn. The person is coming and asking about their married life and a question with respect to their marriage. Now, since Venus is debilitated with Rahu, there is a lot of confusion, mistrust going on in the marriage, and the relationship is not good. Behind, there was Sun in Leo. So earlier the situation was good, and the problem has happened or initiated by the involvement of some authority figure, father figure or someone elder in the family. And ahead, since there is a malefic, since there is Saturn, since there are malefic planets, the problem is going to increase for the person. You can even extrapolate it to such an extent that if a person comes to you for a consultation and they come in the Hora of Sun, behind Sun in the previous sign, you have, let's say, Moon with Rahu. And ahead of Sun, you have Jupiter. You can say that before coming here, the person had an argument or had to have a confrontation or there was something that happened that deeply upset the person. And after returning from here, when they go back to their house, something positive and auspicious is going to happen. And I'm just giving very crude examples, not defining the entire situation, but you get the idea of what is happening here and how you can use this concept or extrapolate with respect to progression to determine what has happened in the past, what is going to happen in the future, where the person is coming from, where the person will go, what happened in the previous couple of hours with the person, what is going to happen in the next couple of hours with the person. Right? Another thing, if the person comes to you in the Hora of Mars and previously in the previous sign there is Venus, you can say that the person encountered a married couple or a wedding procession while coming to visit you. Right? So things like that. The entire concept of progression in all its length and width can be used in the Prashna chart. Can be applied in the Prashna chart using the Hora Lord. Right? Lastly, an ill-dignified Hora Lord indicates failure. Irrespective of how strong your ascendant is, if the Hora Lord is completely damaged, if the Hora Lord does not have a saving grace, the question will not materialize. So that's an important concept and that's an important point. So this is overall how you can use the Hora Lord in your analysis with respect to the birth chart and Prashna chart. Another thing is with respect to Muhurat chart. For example, you have given a Muhurat for someone in the let's say in the Aries ascendant, and that Muhurat is for marriage, and you happen to have given a Muhurat where Venus happens to be debilitated in the 6th house, and it's the Hora of Venus where you're recommending the marriage, there will definitely be problems in marriage. Right? It's important to take care of the dignity and the placement of the Hora Lord even in the Muhurat chart. Otherwise, it creates problems. So these are the concepts associated with how the Hora can be used in terms of astrology, its length and breadth, and the multitude of ways in which you can utilize this concept and be able to make predictions. And with that, we complete our session today. which is just an overview and how Hora can be used in simple terms on the day-to-day basis. And as an astrologer, what are the length and breadth of the Hora and how you can use it or utilize it in your daily life. Right? Any questions that any of you have, you can put it in the chat and I'll be able to answer them. There is one question which says, say Hora is sun during interview, but interview time in the chart, sun is badly placed. Will it still be good? So to answer that question, two things. One, if the Hora of sun is very good for you, if Hora of sun is favorable for you in your horoscope, then definitely the Hora of sun is going to be good, and irrespective of its placement in the Prashna chart, the Hora will dominate, because the Muhurat chart or the transit at the time of the interview determined from the ascendant changes every 2 hours. But the Hora changes every 1 hour. It's a stronger factor than ascendant. So in the ascendant chart, or in the chart created from the ascendant, whether sun goes in the 6th house, 8th house with Rahu or with Ketu, it does not matter. As long as it's the Hora of sun, it's favorable for you. And sun is not in total affliction. The Hora of sun is good. But if you choose the Hora of sun for your interview, and it's the day of the eclipse, where sun is with Rahu and sun is eclipsed completely, that day the Hora of sun is of no help. That day the Hora of sun is of no use. So what the dignity of the Hora Lord in the Prashna chart or Muhurat chart itself at that time is not as important as how that planet is in your horoscope and its dignity. If it goes in the 6th house, it's still manageable, salvageable. If the chart created with the Hora Lord as the ascendant, or as the Hora Lord as the 1st house is good enough, then how it is placed with respect to the ascendant does not matter. But yeah, it should be in a good dignity. Any other questions? When talking about meeting people, we observe and relate the Hora Lord to the people we are meeting, but the Hora Lord is the same for them as well and should hold true for ourselves too. Okay, so two things, and this is really where it gets very interesting. The Hora is defined for the observer, right? And the Hora is defined for overall how that planet and how that the thing is going on, or how that influence happens in your life. So let's say two people meet each other in the Hora of Mercury. They are in the Hora of Mercury, and we're talking about from the perspective of one of the person. The other person, the one who's observing the Hora and the one who's knowing, who determines how the other person is, or how the other person, whether the other person, what behavioral qualities the other person holds, they will have the quality of communicative. They will have this quite jovial and quite witty personality, someone who talks a lot, speaks a lot, and all of those things. With respect to the first person, who is the observer, they may not necessarily be of the same personality, because when they are observing, and this is really what defines a majority of thing about astrology, because they are observing, they are not observing themselves, they are observing the other person, right? And it's the other person who will be determined by that personality. And say that both of them are observing, or both of them are keeping a track of what Hora it is, and what people we are meeting, and how the personality of the other person is going to be. In that case, both of them will have a Mercurian aspect to their personality if they're meeting in the Hora of Mercury, right? So it is how you're observing and when you're observing that defines what is the trait of the other person, and how the other person, and what holds true for the other person. In case, or let us talk about what do I mean by this and how this can hold. So for example, you are meeting someone in the Hora of Mercury, and the interaction is happening in the Hora of Mercury, and For you, the other person is Mercurian. Now, how do I identify that if I am a person dominated by Saturn, then how is it that this situation is not showing that? So to answer that, it will show indirectly. Mercury may be in the sign of Saturn. Mercury may be aspected by Saturn. Mercury may be conjunct Saturn. And that tells you that it's the involvement of these two people that is happening right here. But the Hora for the observer will give a direct correlation with how the other person is. Right? So it's not that it's telling about just the one person, but the observer defines what is the primary event that is happening. Does that make sense? Currently, Mars is closely conjunct with Venus. So right now, it's a very different situation. Mars is closely conjunct with Venus, and Venus is in that manner. Venus and Mars are in very strong confrontation with each other. So in this case, right now, Mars is, in the traditional sense, lost in planetary war. And Venus, being with Mars, is in a strong malefic influence. So right now, the Hora of neither Mars or Venus is good. And a common indication by this is, and a common result by this is increasing in the last couple of days or couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks since these two planets have been fairly close to each other, is a lot of confrontations, arguments, and misunderstandings in relationships. Another thing that you have observed is famous personalities associated with the field of arts, Bapi Lahiri, Lata Mangeshkar, these are people who have passed away. Right? So at the moment, and with respect to Mars, you already know what's happening on the world level and the type of escalations that we're going through. So right now, neither the Hora of Mars nor the Hora of Venus is very favorable, because both of them are afflicting and afflicted by each other. As Saturn, Hora indicates generally delays, but in transit, Saturn is well placed, for example, like in its own sign, then can we say that the person's work may have some delays, but it will give good results in the end? Yes, we can say that, with the caveat that Saturn also needs to be favorably placed in the horoscope of the person. Right? And what definitely indicates success is if Saturn is quite favorably placed at the time the person is doing something in the Hora of Saturn. So for example, if you have an interview tomorrow at 11 a.m. and tomorrow at 11 a.m. Saturn happens to be conjunct with Venus and in a favorable placement from Sun, Moon, and the ascendant. In that case, definitely, with some delays, with some glitches, it is going to give you the final result, right? So that is the case. Okay, so I think we have covered the questions that we had, and hopefully this session was productive for you. Hopefully the session was informative. Hopefully this is something that you will be able to encounter and use in your day-to-day life. Thank you so much for being present in today's session. I will plan on a couple of more such sessions on just trivial topics that maybe you can use on the daily basis, maybe are even relevant for astrologers, and just insights that otherwise we are not able to cover, or otherwise we are not able to go through. I'll plan a couple of sessions on this, and these will be free for all of you, for anyone to join who is interested, and these recordings will be made available through YouTube, so these are something that you can always access, right? Thank you so much for being present in today's session, and hopefully you had a good learning experience. Thank you.